Hey everybody, John Moore here, and I am a shamanic teacher and practitioner. And today I want to help guide you to answer the question for yourself because I'm not going to answer it. Should I choose shamanism as a spiritual path? Because shamanism, as a set of tools, a set of practices, a set of beliefs, can be practiced strategically, tactically. In other words, like I can, as a practitioner, I serve other people. I work, I teach shamanism, but I also take on clients for healing sessions and the like, and perform ceremony and um, all kinds of things. So that's sort of a traditional shamanic role, or a role that would be associated with somebody called a shaman. In my tradition, we don't call ourselves shaman, which is why I use the terms shamanic teacher, shamanic practitioner. Um, Not to get too confusing. Hopefully not. We'll straighten things out here. Um, but shamanism is also my, I would say, main spiritual path. And so it is the I don't consider myself a religious person, but it would be my religion, I guess. It's not an organized religion. There aren't temples or churches. There aren't organizations or clergy other than shamans and practitioners. So what makes this a good spiritual path for certain people and not for others? Now, we don't proselytize. I don't say that shamanism, everybody should be doing shamanism. Far from it. In fact, I would say that shamanism is not a path for most people. So generally speaking, somebody who is going to be drawn to shamanism as a spiritual path for the rest of their life is going to feel a real calling towards it. That's number one. This goes beyond, I heard the word shamanism, or I heard that it's good for healing, or I heard that it's good for this, and I'm really interested in it. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with being interested in shamanism, reading books about it, taking courses, um, even studying with a teacher. But there will come a point in your practice that spirit will either begin to initiate you or not, or spirit will begin to initiate you before you go into shamanic learning, before you actually go. And that happens for a lot of people. The call to shamanic awakening often happens as the result of crisis. It could be a health crisis, up unto like a near-death experience. Could be a mental health or emotional health crisis. Could be a crisis like my life fell apart all of a sudden, and I'm trying to put the pieces back together. This is common cross culturally. This is common. Even many students who come to me and say, "I feel like shamanism is a path for me." My I'm just going through a stage where my life has fallen apart. I hear that over and over again. Not to say that anyone who has been through a crisis is feeling the call or hearing some kind of call to shamanism, because that also, is just a thing that sometimes happens to people. Crisis can also be less individual and more global. So I saw a really an uptick in interest in shamanism during the pandemic when everybody was on lockdown, right? We had this sort of global crisis. Something like 1 million people in the US died, and I forget how many globally. Um, so that's a crisis, right? Like any sort of epidemic or pandemic is going to present a crisis, whether, traditionally in a tribal group, if, a tribe was hit by some sort of disease that was causing a lot of problems, you might see people starting to awaken as they needed to fill the role of shaman in that tribal group. And this is, from the shamanic perspective, this is spirit directed crisis. Um, so let me give you a few things to think about, whether shamanism might be a spiritual path for you. And it can be whether you're ever interested in working with other people as some kind of practitioner or not. You can you can learn shamanism only for yourself in this day and age. In traditional indigenous cultures that are shamanic, it would be your vocation. That would be the only way to get into shamanism. But many people, um, particularly in Western cultures, are getting into shamanism as a spiritual practice or as an adjunct to other practices. One of the things that I have found personally and with other people I know is that if it's your path, it's going to take center stage around anything else you do. Now, shamanism does not exclude any other practice or belief system, but the other way around can happen. So I've had clients who came to me, and said, technically seeing you as a healer is against my religion, and you're still going to be my client unless you decide that that's not okay. Like that idea of violating that part of your religion is not okay. But there's nothing in shamanism that says that that's wrong. So you can be Christian and be a shaman, or uh, Muslim or Jewish or Buddhist or Zoroastrian or whatever, except if your other spiritual system prohibits that. If it's your spiritual path, it will take you deeper into that potentially, right? Shamanism can take you deeper into direct experience with spirit. So shamanism as a path is a path of direct revelation. And so as that, you are going to see things, experience things, and get information. And this may sound cool, like a superpower, and it is. It's both of those things. It's amazing. But the truth is, we often get information that is unpleasant, uncomfortable. Things like, you're messing up your life. Get it right. Just personally. So those kinds of things can happen, and you have to be open to that. Shamanism will also, and one of the reasons I say it's not a path for everyone. Um, will also dig things up out of your shadow and make you confront them. And if you don't, you're going to go through crisis again. You're going to go through another initiation. It's happened to me multiple times. In fact, practicing shamanism will accelerate spiritual initiation. And that's not pleasant. Why would you choose to do something that's not pleasant? Well, why do you go to the gym when, why do you eat healthy foods when, chocolate cookies are available, or, all of these things? We forego the pleasant and the pleasurable sometimes because it's better for us. Shamanism's a hard path. Um, you know, I I like different religious systems, and it's always been amazing to me. I've gone to services in many different churches. I've gone to Jewish services. I've been to weddings and funerals and um, lots of different religious systems. I've meditated with Buddhist monks. I've done, all kinds of practice. And I always thought, wow, this is amazing. Like, I can go to this place and show up and I can feel really good when I come out of it. And there are certain religions, obviously, that people, that's what they're getting. They're getting this sort of like positive charge of emotional energy. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. Um, but shamanism is going to force introspection on you, and it's going to force you to dig up. And we all have stuff in our shadow. We all have stuff that it would be healthier for us to look at, but more comfortable for us not to look at. And shamanism will force you to confront that stuff, you know, or that's not your path if that doesn't happen from time to time. Now, there are tools for managing that. There are tools for doing better at that. There are tools for living a better life, a healthier life. There are tools for feeling more connected with nature, with spirit. And if that sounds like it's for you, then perhaps shamanism is a good spiritual path for you. Um, let me talk a little bit about how one, if I feel a pull to shamanism. So my personal story is, I was dealing with a health crisis, both a mental and physical health crisis in my early 40s, I think. I'm in my 50s now. And so my early 40s, just about a decade ago, I was dealing with a crisis and I was doing what I knew to do, which I had been trained in Buddhist meditation. I was exercising, meditating, taking supplements, seeing a doctor, everything I could potentially do, and seemingly getting worse. I had lost 60 pounds. I was amazingly depressed, but also having panic attacks. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I couldn't be there for my children in a way that they deserve as a parent. And that was the thing that really kind of pushed me over the edge there. And one day I was meditating and heard a voice that sounded like it was somebody standing in front of me, very loud, forceful, masculine voice that said, "You need to learn shamanism." And that was it. And I didn't know anything about shamanism at the time. And I said to myself, I don't know how that's going to happen. I live in the state of Maine in the US. I don't live in Peru. I don't live in Mongolia or Siberia. How am I going to learn shamanism? As it turns out, there is a sizable, thriving shamanic community here with some really good teachers. And my teacher is, retired at this point, but was one of the, in my opinion, one of the most highly respected shamanic teachers in the West, and well known, and accepted me as a student after some back and forth. I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but I feel like this is something I need to do, and I got a really clear message, and I don't know anything about shamanism, and I haven't taken any courses, and whatever. And she met with me and accepted me into her apprenticeship. So that was a real calling, like an actual calling, literally, to shamanism. As if somebody called me up on the phone and said, "Hey, I got something for you." And I didn't really know what I was getting into, and I almost quit my very first day. I was emotionally overwhelmed. Shamanism can be overwhelming because it just opens you up. And anybody who has uh, done certain substances, psychedelics, I've heard stories about this happening there as well. And I'm not recommending people experiment with psychedelics. I know there's some medical research and stuff, and I'm positive about that. I'm positive about um, the use of plant medicine in traditional ways and also in standard medical ways, but um, not in recreational ways. It's sacred stuff. So I went and I got accepted into an apprenticeship, and I went, and it was the first day was very emotionally overwhelming for me. I was in a really bad spot when I started out, and I almost didn't go back. And I sure am glad I did, because it has been my life path for about a decade. And I just I couldn't feel more blessed about having this pathway in front of me, and the people I've met in this path, and the people I serve, and the students that I help teach, and just what a great pathway it's been for me. But again, it may not be for you. So you have to ask yourself a few things, right? If to understand. So first of all, you probably wouldn't be asking if shamanism was the right path for you if you didn't believe in a spirit world, right? Um, so if your beliefs are completely incompatible with shamanism, it's going to be very hard to do anything. Now, your beliefs will change as you experience the spirit world. You will understand more. But if you're not open to the idea that there is a spirit world, that there are worlds and there are spirits that interact with us, um, and because shamanism comes out of animism, you're going to have a hard time. It's sort of like, if I don't believe in the energy body, I'm probably not going to become a Reiki practitioner. If I don't believe in, meridians and things, I'm probably not going to become an acupuncturist because those things have to be real, in at least the way that we can experience them, um, as a foundation of the practice. This isn't to say that shamanism is it's not a very prescriptive form of spirituality. In other words, there's no real dogma. It is, okay, here are the shamanic worlds. We, go into trance when we, view them. Um, One of the questions I get asked a lot, and I've answered this in other places and on my blog, and I can't remember if I've done a video about it at this point, is um, can I do this if I can't visualize, if I can't make strong visual pictures? And the answer is yes, you can. You can learn how to journey, which is the basic practice of shamanism, without strong visualization. And I know people who do it who are what they call aphantasic, meaning they can't make pictures in their head. They use other senses. If you are 100% aphantasic, meaning you not only do you not have pictures in your head, but you can't imagine any other sensory information, it's going to be challenging. But I do think that there are ways around that. I do think that there are methods for increasing visualization ability and ability with other senses. Um, what happens in shamanism is information comes to us from spirit and that arises in our consciousness. And in order for us to understand it in our prefrontal cortex, our visual center has to activate and feed us images, right? Because when we perceive spirit, if I see a spirit out here, spirit's formless. I'm not actually with my eyeballs seeing a spirit. I'm seeing that through spiritual senses, and the information just arises, and my consciousness forms the image of a spirit. Um, and that's true for everything we perceive. If I pick up this pen, this pen is mostly empty space, and what's actually affecting my eyeballs is just light rays bouncing off this pen, and in my consciousness arises an image of a pen as an object. In shamanism, this this and everything around you has or is a spirit. This pen is a spirit. Um, that's one of the keys to understanding animism, is that everything that you can perceive as an individual thing, including things that you can't necessarily see, like wind or a an organization, um, those things have a spirit. They are a spirit. Anyway, so if you feel a calling towards shamanism and you're willing to learn a lot, there is a lot to learn in shamanism. Shamanism, you can learn the basics of journeying in a couple of days, or 3 sessions with a shamanic teacher one-on-one, which is how I teach the basics of journeying. Um, and that, if you want to, that's as far as you could go. But if it's going to become your spiritual path, you're going to want to continue learning. And one of the things I love about shamanism is you can be a lifelong learner. So you can learn different forms of shamanism. You can learn, as long as cultures are open to sharing, and there are many who are. You can learn different cultures, shamanic practices. Please don't appropriate or misappropriate any culture's shamanic practices. But you can, with somebody who's willing to teach you from that culture, practice respectfully something that has been passed on with good intent. Um, I'll talk more about all of that in another video. I've done a whole video on cultural appropriation and shamanism, and I've written a lot about it. Um, but as long as we're not, ripping off other cultures or pretending to be other cultures or pretending to be anything we're not, many cultures are open to you learning from their teachers or participating in ceremony with them. So just, understand that there are some that are not open to you participating in their ceremonies or practicing their sacred rites or even going into their sacred space, and respect that. It is important to their spirituality. Um, so, shamanism as a topic, as something you learn, is both very broad, meaning there are many, many different aspects to shamanism. There's everything from, healing practices to work with deceased spirits to, divination work to work with the elements to working with weather and the planets. And so it's very, very broad, and it's also very, very deep. You could take any aspect of shamanism and probably spend the rest of your life exploring it and never get to the end of it. Um, so to me, that's a beautiful thing because I'm a lifelong learner and I will never stop learning about shamanism. Um, even though I teach shamanism, I still take classes from people from time to time, take courses, workshops, seminars. I've gone to a sacred drum birthing workshop and made my own shamanic drum. I've studied with um, a shaman from Nepal, and I've done shamanic work with people who are trained by South American shamans, and so there's lots and lots of stuff to learn. I don't teach stuff that has not been passed to me as a teacher. So I'm not going to teach Nepali shamanism, or I'm not going to teach South American shamanism, but I will teach the things that I've been taught to teach and to pass along. So it takes a while. I mean, it takes a while if you decide that you want to become a practitioner. I have a whole video about what you need for that. But that takes a while. But you can begin with a few days of learning, and take that practice of the basic practice of shamanic journeying, and you could explore just that for the rest of your life and never run out of things to learn, do, and connect with. And the whole thing is about becoming closer and closer to spirit, feeling your deeper connection to spirit, more connection with spirit. Shamanism is also nature based, and nature is a spirit, but also full of spirits. And so, you know, it doesn't matter if you live in a city or if you live out in the country like I do. I live in a rural area where I'm exposed to nature on a daily basis. Um, but you're going to want to be able to get in touch with nature on a regular basis. So if you live in a city, that might mean going to a park or traveling outside of the city. If you live in an area where there is the natural world is really present, that's a lot easier. Where I'm sitting now, I look out into the woods through my back door, and I sit here every day and work with nature. And when the weather's good, I'm out in it. And sometimes when the weather's not so good, I'm out in it. And I have an altar to the nature spirits out there, and I do work with them. So the other thing, another consideration for deciding if shamanism is a path for you is, some people are deathly afraid of spirits. And this is basically propaganda from the ages where you could be put to death for consorting with spirits, and that all spirits were considered demons from hell that are fallen angels and blah, 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 and against God and XYZ. If you're deathly afraid of encountering a spirit, and I've definitely run into those people, shamanism is not going to necessarily be a great path for you unless you use it to overcome your fear of spirits. What happens is you start to perceive the spirits around you after a certain amount of practice, beyond just when you're journeying, and you realize that the world we live in is full of spirits. It's actually crowded all the time. They're everywhere. They're in your house. They're next to you now. They're outside. They're inside. So you just have to accept that and become okay with that and understand that you're in relationship with these beings. When I first started training in shamanism, I was married, and I would come home, and um, lots of paranormal activity would happen in my house. And I was sort of like, oh, that's, whatever. It's kind of funny. It's kind of cool. and my wife at the time was really not cool with it, and said to me at one point, would you please stop bringing people home with you? And I wasn't doing it on purpose. It's just sometimes shamanic and other forms of spiritual practice kicks up paranormal activity in your vicinity. I'll do a whole video about that at some point, explaining why and what you can do about it. So anyway, if I hope this has been some good guidance towards making your own decision. Nobody, in my opinion, nobody should tell you what is your path. You should discover that on your own. If you feel a real calling to shamanism, it probably is a good path for you. If you are just interested, like dipping your toes in and seeing if that's for you, that's fine too. It can definitely work out that way, and you can, you don't have to make a lifelong commitment. You can take a course or take a few lessons from a, with a teacher one-on-one, or, read up on it and see how you align with it. Again, you don't have to give anything else up from a shamanic perspective. You don't have to give up if you're, Christian or Buddhist or Jewish or Muslim or whatever. From a shamanic perspective, it doesn't matter. There's no dogma. There's no book of rules. So you don't have to give that up. It's only in the other direction. Anyway, I hope this has been instructive. Um, please hit the like button if you like this. Hit the subscribe button. You can also join this channel, which helps support the channel and also gives you perks like members only videos and priority responses to comments and all kinds of stuff. There's a whole list you can find out more about, and there's a link down below. With that, please take care, and I will talk to you all really soon.